The world will little note nor long remember whether President Donald Trump banged his hand on a table in a meeting with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer before leaving, and leaving the rest of us with the government shutdown now headed into its fourth week. But it became a point of contention between, naturally, the president and the press. Now, this is not an instance of journalists quoting anonymous sources or making stuff up. After this meeting, which everybody agrees the president exited rather abruptly after asking Nancy Pelosi whether, if he reopened the government, she would provide any funding for the wall a month from now, and she said no, and he said bye-bye, and he was out of there. But Schumer said that Trump slammed his hand on the table. Pelosi called him a petulant president, and the president tweeted about this, and here's what he said to reporters yesterday. "I didn't pound the table, I didn't raise my voice, that was a lie." He said, "I don't have temper tantrums, I really don't, but it plays to a narrative, but it's a lie." Here's the president talking about a media narrative, and this is so fascinating because, of course, every White House tries to put out a certain narrative about its leader, and the media story, the media take on the president is often very different. Never as dramatically or as constantly or as viciously in some cases as in the Trump era. So he's blaming it on the press, he's blaming it on fake news, when what journalists were trying to do was find out what happened in this closed-door meeting. They're quoting the two Democratic leaders on the record, and they're asking the president for his side. As part of his tear against the media, there was also this yesterday. Oh, by the way, he said that the media should give the Democratic leaders 4 Pinocchios. That's the Washington Post fact-checking scale, because he said Republican leaders would back up his version. But what you guys report, you do it anyway because you're fake news. Now, it also came down to the question about, remember the campaign promise over and over again, and Mexico will pay for the wall. I know the fake news likes to say it, say the president. During the campaign, I would say Mexico is going to pay for it. Obviously, I never said this. I never meant they're going to write a check. I said they're going to pay for it. Well, he didn't clarify or qualify in all of those campaign promises, so it's certainly fair game for the media to bring it up. What the president now says is, well, Mexico is kind of indirectly paying for it through the new trade deal that replaced NAFTA. It's fine for him to make that case, but to blame it on fake news when, of course, we're having a government shutdown over $5 billion over a wall that he originally did say many times Mexico would pay for is another question. The president on much more solid ground, though, and I talked about this yesterday in arguing about this off-the-record lunch that he had with the network anchors, at which it was leaked by somebody in that room to the New York Times what he had said privately about his staff, whether he was joking or not, kind of talking him into giving the Oval Office speech, and he didn't necessarily think it was such a hot idea. Here's the tweet. Gave an off-the-record luncheon, somewhat of a White House tradition or custom to network anchors. They quickly leaked the contents of the meeting. Who would believe how bad it has gotten with the mainstream media, which has gone totally bonkers? You know, of all the insults the president has hurled at fake news, enemy of the people, dishonest, scum, and all of that, bonkers might just be a new term, kind of a technical term, I would say. And then he continued, and this wasn't tied to any specific complaint. Mainstream media have never been more dishonest than it is now. NBC and MSNBC are going crazy, says the president. They report stories purposely, the exact opposite of facts. They are truly the opposition party working with the Dems, maybe even worse than fake news CNN. Now, I know that the president enjoys counterpunching. I know that his base loves this stuff. But, you know, I would just make a few distinctions here. It is fine for him to push back against what he thinks is unfair reporting. If he wants to start arguing about whether he banged his hand on the table or not, that's fine too. But again, that was on the record reporting, quoting Democratic leaders. He did make the campaign vow about Mexico paying for the wall. On the other hand, sometimes he really has a point. The media get things wrong. They have to retract them. They exaggerate them. Or in the case of this luncheon, somebody did violate the off-the-record agreement, and the president has every right to be ticked off about that. He may be conflating this all together, but it does come down to this term narrative. Narrative is something that pundits often use to describe the president. It's hardly surprising to me for the president himself, who is the media critic-in-chief, now saying he doesn't like the media narrative, but recognizing that the narrative that the press puts out there about him is very, very different, not only from what the White House puts out, but how Donald Trump sees himself.